Tajudeen Ibrahim, the Director, Research and Strategy, Chapel Hill Denham, is with me. Hello, Tajudeen. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Hello, Nancy. Good morning, and thank you for having me on the show today.
Thank you for joining me. Now, let me get started with the first question. How unnerving is this number for you, 34.19%?
So the 34.19% inflation on a year-on-year basis for the month of June came in slightly below our expectations. We
Yes.
at Chapel Hill Denham were actually, forecasting 34.69% given the trajectory of inflation over the past, 12 months. So we saw the number coming in, slightly below our expectations. But we also noticed that it came in
Oh,
higher than
Tajudeen, sorry,
market
did
expectations.
I get you right? At your firm, you projected higher than 34.19%. Is that what I heard?
Yes, that is what you heard. We forecast 34.69%. So the number that was reported, was not surprising. It is even to our side, surprising to the upside. I mean, it is positively surprising because we had expected it to be as high as 34.69. What we find as a negative surprise actually is the month-on-month uptick in inflation, because the deceleration or the disinflation that we have seen in the past 3 months was truncated in the month of June. When I say disinflation, just for the
Yeah,
purpose of those that might
slowest
not know
rise.
it, it means that the rate at which the prices of goods and services was slowing down. It slowed down in March. It slowed down in April. It also slowed down in the month of May. But there was a resurgence in the month of June, where month-on-month inflation rose. And I think that is where the major negative surprise is in
Exactly.
terms of the inflation number for June.
You just took out the second question from my mouth, which is, of course, the three readings, the three month-on-month readings which we've gotten from the NBS, as it were. And you've just alluded to it, March, April, and May. And why it was also surprising for me was what I spoke about at the beginning, that Cardoso in previous meetings, in fact, in the last meeting, he did mention that there is confidence. He sounded very confident in the sense that the month-on-month reading is showing a slowdown, which is disinflation as you attributed it to. Now, does this really spoil the fun for the CBN's control of inflation? Because I'm actually wondering what they will tell us next week when they meet. So has it really spoiled the fun for them in terms of, okay, higher interest rates have been controlling inflation, albeit slow, but we've been seeing this inflation in the last 3 months, but now it just rocked the party.
I think two things, are up for consideration in this case. I reckon that, the first factor for consideration is the rainy season, which is currently here.
Okay.
And what happens usually in the rainy season is that you find a slowdown or, a decline in food supply locally. So when food supply locally reduces, what it means is that prices will go up, during that period. And to actually plug the gap, you will be considering importing, food from neighboring countries. And this is what I believe, happened in the month of June. And if we now consider the currency movement in the month of June, at least based on NAFEM window, rate, the naira weakened by about 1.3%. So we actually were importing whatever food we were importing to plug that demand supply gap. We were importing them at higher intra exchange rate in the month of June relative to the month of May. And that, to my mind, is largely speaking the reason that we had imported food inflation, also rising on a month-on-month basis. So that, to my mind, are the key drivers. Number one is the rainy season that limited, food supply locally. Number two is the movement in exchange rates that even made imported, food items to be much higher in prices because of higher exchange rates in the month of June relative to in the month of May.
Now, Tajudeen, let's talk about this food importation, which you talked about. Of course, just a few days ago, also the federal government has said that it's coming up with food import waivers. Now, there are two questions for you concerning this food import waiver. Do you think that the 150 days suspension for food import duty would impact July figure at the end of this month when MBS releases July's figure in August? That is one. Then number two, do you think that that action will bring down food inflation?
So let me start with the second one. That action actually can bring down, food inflation, because what it means is that for imported, food items, those food items will come in at, relatively cheaper prices compared to, what we had, with the import duty on them. And to my mind, that over time should help, to lead to much lower, food prices in the country. But what I find or consider a downside risk to that strategy by the government is the announcement of the time frame. Just because of the way that many Nigerians behave, we may see some, marketers, we may see some operators in that space buying those food items, keeping them in their stores without selling them, and trying to wait till well over 150 days to begin to sell at prevailing market prices at that point in time. So to my mind, they shouldn't have announced a particular time frame. They should just have said, they should just have kept that to their minds and just say, look, we have suspended the import duty on food items, until, for some time without gauging or giving any guidance. So people will be buying and be selling with the mind that we don't even know when this will last. But when you already have a sense around 150 days or thereabout, people may plan a devilish strategy, in that regard, in my view. And at the end of those 150 days, it's been then appear as if the strategy of the government didn't work just because of some selected saboteurs. The only way, to my mind, this can be addressed if the government monitors marketers, if they monitor markets, to ensure that prices are not excessively high beyond the level they should be. The final part of your question is, will this impact on July inflation? I think possibly no, because there's always a time lag between when government put out policy and when they implement it, and then when we begin to see the impact in the entire economy. I reckon we should watch out for like the next 2 to 3 months before we begin to see the impact on food inflation, in my view.
What would you say about the view of the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, that has said that the decision by Nigeria's government to allow massive food importation risks destroying Nigeria's agriculture, that what we should concentrate on is producing more food, as well as, and that would definitely provide jobs. That's on one hand. The second question arises from what you had earlier said in terms of the timeline. Do you also think that because of the timeline, there may be administrative pressures that may not make this work? And, and do you think that this government really thought about that strategy in terms of food imports? Of course, that was announced on July 10 by Minister Kiari. Food imports food import duty on maize, brown rice, cowpea, and all of that.
So honestly speaking, to my view, food import duty suspension is a great idea, because we're talking about demand and supply here. Food demand will not decline in Nigeria. Rather, it will continue to rise because of our rising population. When we have rising demand and the supply is falling, the only way out, in the short term is for you to consider, looking externally for help or for support. And that is what I think the government is implementing as the right strategy, because we currently have low local supply. In terms of what Dr. Akinwumi said, I know that even Dr. Akinwumi himself knows that the Nigerian government likes the agriculture sector, and it is one sector that they are focused on. The only challenge to my mind, which is what is limiting our local food production, is the issue of insecurity. So that is one thing that all of us have to address as a country. The government has a major role to play, but also the citizens also have the roles to play around. Say something when you see something or notice something. With that, we can improve the entire security architecture of the country. And I reckon also that this security issue should not be something that is left to the federal government alone. It should be the concern and responsibility of the state government. It should also, of course, be the concern and responsibility of the local government. If there is an improvement in local government security, no doubt, the security in each state will improve. And if that materializes at state level, then at federal level, we will all have peace, around security, and we'll be talking about the ability of the farmers to go to their farm and bring out what we will eat in this country. We are too large a country not to be feeding ourselves. I agree, we have to provide employment via agriculture, but when there is insecurity, there is no agriculture.
Now, let's stick with states a bit. Uh, what do you think should be the effort of state governors right now? Because it seems that when the federal government is speaking, they are speaking through this ear, the right ear. It goes out through the left ear. Because we are not seeing, commensurate efforts from the state government. Yesterday, the federal government announced trucks, 20 trucks of rice have been shipped to 36 states in the country, including FCT, 25 kg bag of rice, 1,200 25 kg bags per truck to each state, including the FCT. Should the governors really be bowing their heads in shame now, because we've seen consistent food inflation, surging food inflation in the last 2 years or so, as well as even headline inflation in the last 1 year and a half, or in fact in the last 3 years or so, we've been seeing inflation go up like 3, 4 years. It's not even been coming down. So the efforts of the states in terms of combating inflation, perhaps from the food production side, that is one. Then number two, the efforts of the federal government yesterday in tackling food shortage, 20 trucks of rice. How far can that go, really? What also comes to my mind is the COVID time, what we saw for palliatives then. I also do think, I think during President Buhari's time also, they also shared trucks of rice. We don't even know how far that one went. This is
So,
another
so
announcement.
So you will not know how all those trucks will go, because the number of trucks are just way too small. To put it in perspective, we are talking about 20 trucks per state. That comes to 24,000 trucks. Let us take Lagos State for instance. In Lagos State, the population is well over 20-25 million, and we
That
are
you mean
talking
24,000 bags of rice, not 24,000 trucks.
so 24,000
1,000 bags
bags
of
of
rice,
rice.
yes, 25
Exactly.
kg, yes.
Yes, 25 kg. So 24,000,
Not even
bags
50
of
kg.
rice. Not even 50
Hey,
kg.
oh
So it
God.
is 24,000 of,
Is
25,
it one
you know,
mudu per
uh,
one local government?
kgs. Exactly. So that is where the analysis is. It is way too small. It is not even up to half a million. Not to even talk about a million. And we're talking about well over 20 million population, for instance. in Lagos State. Let us put this in number in perspective as also in Naira and Kobo. If you look at what rice prices are saying now in the market, you will realize that those 24,000 bags of rice, 25 kg each, comes to around 960 million naira, which means you are basically giving each of the states just about 1 billion naira. So where would that get to? So that will not solve any problem because it will not even go beyond those that are sharing it. It will not get to the doorsteps of the really hungry people in the public domain. That is what I fear. And this is one area that the state government could monitor better. It should not be that those trucks will land in those states and then they will be shared among government staff. That should not be the case. So we should have a robust distribution of those. We say they are few in number, right? But it is something, right? So it is something that has to be shared to those that are genuinely in need in the public domain.
I'm really wondering how it will be shared, because what number of people will this really be? Can they share this? 25 kg of rice. How many mudu of rice is in it? Is it how would they do it? Do they have the number of poor people and vulnerable people in their state, or they will just take it to IDP centers or what? How are they even going to share it?
It is extremely small, and I reckon that what they have to do is to just supply more. That is the only way
so
out.
So who will supply more? The federal government?
So
the states should augment?
The state governments can augment in this case because it is important that they take care of their citizens. And I think going forward, given the level of development that we have seen in terms of FAC allocation from the federal government straight to the account of the local government, I think we should watch out for how local governments too will be part of this kind of gesture to the public. It is important to watch out for what the local governments too can do. Now that they will be more buoyant financially as they be getting their finances from the federal government directly. And I think in terms of strategy for the states to boost food production, one key element that has to be addressed to my mind is the availability of land for farming purposes. There should be dedicated areas, dedicated, part of each of the states in the country for agriculture. Lagos State, as small as it is, should also get engaged in this regard. We still have areas such as Ekwe, such as Ibejuleki, where we can have some, elements of farming, no matter how small, the farmland is. I think there should be, that strategy, and they should ensure that they are deliberate around making it large-scale farming. It will support whatever comes from other states, from Oyo State, even from the north to Lagos State. But to sit in Lagos and have no, plan around agriculture, to my mind, will look like, the worst strategy that a state government can have. So this is not only Lagos State, we have other states. We can see that relatively speaking, security is sort of better in Lagos, but I think in other parts of the country,
Tajudeen, it's not better. Is it not the same Lagos that they kidnapped? Kidnappings are going on every day. The same Lagos that they kidnapped high-profile people. I think the high-sense officials and co. And there are talks of ransom being paid in millions of dollars.
But relatively speaking, we can't compare with some states, up there in the north. Okay. I think that is
every state has its own shade of insecurity, really.
Agreed. But whatever the case is, I think the strategy around agriculture is very important, and it speaks to the ability of each state to see what can I bring to the table in terms of trying to feed
food
my
production
people as the governor. It is a very important strategy that every governor must have and implement accordingly, so that whatever you are importing from other states in the country is to support whatever you are producing locally. You can also look outside of the country, of course, but you must have something you are producing in your state.
Now, still talking about food a little bit before we move to the next area which I would want us to take a look at in terms of the economic managers telling us yesterday that the economy is recovering. But let's take a look at this issue of food and subsidizing food. Because now you've analyzed the way government is sharing trucks of rice. And if we take a look at it, it's not really done well over the last few years. COVID was such a disaster whereby even cartons of noodles were hoarded. Politicians started using them for politics, campaigning, and all of that. What is this thing about subsidizing food? Because even developed economies do subsidize food. The United States, for example, because that's such a quick country, that's a country to just make quick example. The United States Department of Agriculture subsidizes food, gives subsidies even to farmers. They have over 150 programs for subsidy for certain crops in the United States. Like they said, the US is the father of subsidies. Even energy to a certain extent is subsidized. But here, as a developed country, economists, I don't know if you are also part of them, that said, take off subsidy, devalue naira, do this one, do this one. Now, see where we are now. There's a proverb in my place that says, if any benebe, you are doing what you are doing, but if any benebe, that means what is still making this sound? He's still making the sound. You are saying things are improving, but things are getting worse. Sorry,
Okay, so
I hope you understand what I'm saying. I could just relate what I was thinking in my native language.
I understand you absolutely. But I think, it is just some sort of bad culture, in this country. I mean, a culture where everyone or some selected people want to take an undue advantage of the entire population, undue advantage of the citizens. When the government, has a strategy, the best in most countries all over the world, particularly in those developed economy, is that everyone is up and supportive of how that strategy will succeed. The reverse is the case in Nigeria. And this is where, citizens also have, a role to play, because it is not about the government. We have seen a case where the government is subsidizing food items, supplying food items to the public, but we find ourselves in a situation where, some people are hoarding those
Isn't it
food
also
items.
A failure of process and failure of government itself?
So possibly
that's why you have laws in place, there are regulations in place.
Possibly a failure of process, and possibly also a failure of strategy. Because if this were to be done by a corporate organization, they will ensure that they implement it to the last. So this also speaks to where the government also has to improve in terms of implementing their plans and strategy in terms of supporting Nigerians by supplying food. Another way I think they can deal with this is to do to go to the grassroots, go to the local government, not even the state government in this case. When we go to the local government, there are chances that those plans and processes and strategies will succeed, because the local governments are a lot closer to the people than the state government. I think that is one area that the federal government can also consider. Instead of delivering to states, deliver straight to the local government. That is one view.
Okay. All right, Tajudeen, let's quickly take the video. The meeting at the Senate yesterday, I saw the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, NNPC Limited GCEO, Mele Kyari, coming up with he's sounding now like a broken record. It's actually a broken record. The GCEO, you are sounding like a broken record if you are listening, because you said yesterday that the refinery will begin to work, Port Harcourt refinery will begin to work next month. But let's just take a quick check. Let's take a listen to the video, then I'll come back to you, Ibrahim. Just take a look at it, and my next question will be from there.
Said will be a next exporter of petroleum product by the end of this year. And we're very optimistic that by December, this country will be net exporter. That means combination of production coming from us and also from the Dangote refinery and other smaller producing companies that we know are in line to do this. So I can confirm to you, Mr. Chairman, that by the end of the year, this country will be a net exporter of petroleum product. Now, coming specific to NNPC refinery, as you recall, and we have spoken to a number of your committees, that it is impossible to have the Kaduna refinery come to operation before December. It will get to December. Both Wari and Kaduna and Port Harcourt will, as you recall, Mr. President, we did mechanical completion. Let me explain this very clearly. We did have mechanical completion of the Port Harcourt refinery, which means that every technical work that is required to get the refinery on to work has been completed. And I'm very sure that latest by early August, the Port Harcourt refinery old will start producing product. And of course, the new one will get to December, and Wari will also be in production. You know, I'm very optimistic. I can confirm to you that we have taken every step to make sure that it works. Thank you.
Right now, we have a clear plan to see how we can get, 2 million barrels and more. And I believe that we need the support of all members of the National Assembly. We need the support of all Nigerians, to be able to achieve that one. We also, revamping the midstream and the downstream. Our fiscals, are today globally competitive, because you agree with me that before now, complaint was that investors were not coming in. But investors have started coming in, because this government has decided to, make a fiscal condition, a governance, condition or structure.
A number of interventions have been approved by Mr. President. The very well-known ones were the energy transition in order to deepen CNG penetration, both as an alternative to the more expensive petroleum motor spirit and as an avenue to ensure energy competitiveness, so that our industries, our transport sector, our irrigation services can run on cheaper sources of petroleum.
The National Assembly is very concerned because we are the representatives of the people, and we are obliged to ask what is happening. And this is the reason why such a meeting is very important. And we have heard from them, at least they have given us a preamble of the activities going on how our economy can get back to track.
All right, Tajudeen, our economy is recovering. The senator in charge of the finance committee has said that they are the representatives of the people. I looked at myself, I looked at him. He's not representing me. I beg your pardon, because I don't cut millions of naira every month. Rice, now it's very expensive. He would be able to afford a bag of rice. Many Nigerians will not be able to afford that. So what's your reaction to that? In addition to, we were told that the petrol subsidy removal will add savings to government coffers. Where are the savings right now?
Okay, so let me start from where are the savings right now. The reality is that those savings are landed in the accounts of state governments, because the moment there was removal of subsidy and there was the devaluation of the currency last year, the government had a lot more to share in terms of the Federal Account Allocation Committee sharing on a monthly basis. So what we have seen is that they now have more inflows, and they now share more money at the federal government level, the state government level, and also what goes to the local government. We have seen those inflows rise. What we have not seen is the impact on the broad economy. And those impacts, to my mind, will materialize only if we have, dedicated projects. We have projects that, those accretion in revenue, is dedicated towards. And upon completion, there will be something that they can point to that this is what we have done with your money. And if that is not happening, then it can also be used at this current challenging time to subsidize what is biting us the most, which is food prices.
Do you
In my
think that the 2 trillion naira stimulation package that was announced, I think was it last week or so, that's coming as a stabilization package? I think agriculture and food security will get about 500 billion naira. Do you think that that is also part of the savings? Then finally, MPC will meet next week. What do you think will be the decision of the MPC? Would you see a confident Cardoso next week? And if indeed they will raise the rates, and by what percentage do you think that they will raise the rates? Or
Okay, so
whatever they will do?
let me speak very quickly to the 2 trillion that you talked about. The reality is that they were not sharing all the monthly inflow. They are not sharing the entire money among the federal, state, and local government. They actually were keeping some of them. So it is likely that some of those funds are what is being given out as that 2 trillion naira. That is my view.
Okay.
And the second element is around the response of the monetary authority to the rising inflation. I think the authority will still remain hawkish in its tone in terms of monetary policy decision. And I think this possibly calls for around 50 basis points to 75 basis points increase in interest rates by the time they meet next week. Not doing anything at all, will be costly to the economy because it will mean that we have rising inflation and the central bank is taking no action to partly address it. Well, what would be a major concern for them, in my view, is the fact that monthly inflation is now rising. It is something that really calls for concern, and they will need to respond accordingly. But I do not expect them to be aggressive. An aggressive level is to be looking at 100 basis points increase in interest rates or something more than that. I reckon that 50 to 75 basis points looks more like the figure.
Let's see how they would respond because they've been hawkish since Cardoso came in. So I don't know if there will be a balance between hawkish and a bit dovish in terms of not being so aggressive to this, because the Cardoso that I have seen in the last few months, perhaps because of a month-on-month, he may also decide to be a bit more aggressive. But I'm not part of them there. I'm just, reading what I've been seeing. So thank you very much, Tajudeen Ibrahim, for this, comprehensive expose on June's inflation data. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.